Did you hear about what's happening in North Korea? They caught 2,000 North Korean actors in the last year alone trying to get jobs.
I'm pretty sure that I've talked to AI.
Well, that's another thing that's happening, whether you're talking to a person or whether you're talking to AI. A lot of people are just using GPT. They're reading off scripted answers that sound a lot like AI because it is. Now, a lot of folks are looking to AI and they're thinking, hey, I think this could help. And so we're seeing a huge increase in demand for AI and automation. Companies are starting to grow again, but they're not growing their recruiting teams. My read is that the future of recruiting is hyper-personalized. I believe that the future is AI first. I also believe that the future is all-in-one.
On today's episode, we are joined by an old friend of the show, Steve Bartel, who we heard from back in season 2. Steve, as you already know, was employee number 25 at Dropbox and helped it grow to a 1,500-person team during his time there. He then went on to found Gem, an all-in-one AI-powered recruiting platform. My first conversation with Steve was so great that I knew I had to bring him back a second time on the podcast. This time, however, we're going to be talking about the future of recruiting and AI. Steve's vision is that AI won't replace recruiters, but rather supercharge them, handling tedious tasks to free up time for strategic human connections. I'm excited to hear Steve's insights on the future of recruiting with AI, and I'm sure they'll prove invaluable for founders and investors and recruiters navigating today's talent landscape. Steve Bartel, welcome back to the First 10 podcast.
I mean, we could probably just keep riffing for the full hour, and it'd be as good of an episode as any.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Well, let's just do that. I am curious about the application piece. You guys do have a way that applicants can come through your system?
Yep. Yeah, we have two ways. The first is with AI getting really, really good over the last few years. One of the main applications of AI is in helping companies stack rank their inbound, which is it's a huge pain point for customers. It's actually been the biggest shift we've seen in the market over the last 3 years. Each recruiter on average is dealing with three times the inbound applicants across our customer base. And more than 20% of our customers are getting thousands of applicants for a single role. And so inbound app review has become a huge pain point for a lot of the industry and a lot of our customers. And so, yeah, we have this AI app review product that uses generative AI to use natural language to help you stack rank your inbound based on 5 to 10 criteria that make somebody a good fit for the role. So it's saving customers tons of time. I was just catching up with the team over at Zillow. I think they've cut out 75% of their time on app review. And I was on site the other day with Block. They had their talent summit, so everybody was in town in their Bay Area office, and I was just doing a fireside. It was really fun, and they're running a pilot over there. I was like, "Oh, how's it going?" And one of the recruiters was like, "I'm literally saving 90% of the time I used to spend on app review." And so, yeah, with AI, we've actually made a big focus on helping companies rank their inbound, and so we're seeing a lot more in the fraud and sort of spam botting area, and there's a lot of interesting things happening right now. Yeah, we could probably spend the full hour talking about this. Do you want to dive into that? I'm also curious, which things you're seeing with your customers most.
Yeah, so I mean, just speaking of applicants and postings, so we've turned off postings altogether. We used to rely on them just to have some brand representation and some inbound, because you never know when somebody good can come through. And I'll actually just share anecdotally that we were working on a search for a client for good 8-9 months. For one reason or another, the role stayed open. One offer was accepted. One offer was accepted, and the person backed out the day before the start date. Another offer ended up not working out. This startup is amazing. And then they ended up hiring someone, and I'm like, wow, that person looks incredible. Where'd you find that person? And that, they're like an applicant. I was like, oh my God. And then we went on this whole kind of tangent about, the state of postings. But yeah, we turned off our postings because we found that most of the people that came through and most of the people who we, followed up with were fake or were in some way just off. And it just became this archetype of a candidate, and we're just like, we don't want to deal with it. We'd rather just invest our energy, looking for authentic, real talent. And so I'm curious. I mean, how do you filter fakes from applicants? Because it seems so easy to just kind of spam a bunch of postings as a way to get in.
Yeah. So there's a few things happening, and this is one of the biggest like real-time trends that's like growing exponentially and developing really quickly. There's a few things happening. There's some things that like Gem can help with and identify. There's others that we're actually working on a fix for right now. And so I can walk through what we're seeing in the market. So the first is with a lot of the AI application tools, the cost and friction to applying to hundreds or thousands of jobs all at once has gone way down. And so, I think on top of there just being a lot of job seekers in the market, I think this is compounded to be in this world now where recruiters are getting like 3x the applicants per recruiter relative to 3 years ago. And so one of the biggest problems is just with the increase in application volume, like how do you sort through and get to the ones that are actually the best fit? One thing that some of our customers are doing is they're employing CAPTCHAs in the application process itself.
That's interesting.
To add that extra layer of friction and verification that a lot of bots can't get around. Now, some of the bots can still get around CAPTCHAs and are a little bit more sophisticated, but that's definitely helping. In fact, with Gem ATS, we include that as a default option whenever people are setting up their job postings to just include a CAPTCHA before people apply. Once people apply, there's two types of automation happening. One is a little bit easier to deal with than the other. So the first type of automation that's happening is people that are using AI tools just to apply en masse to lots of opportunities, just throwing their hat in tons of different rings, seeing which ones they might get an interview for. That class of automation is a little bit easier because we can use AI to rank the applicants and bubble up the most qualified ones to the top. And so that way, even if you're getting 3, 4, 10,000 applicants for a single role, you're still going to get to review the ones that meet your qualifications first. The thing that's a little bit more nefarious and harder to get around is there's some AI tools out there that help candidates customize their resume bespoke to the specific requirements of the job,
right,
but in ways where they don't actually have the skills or experience or qualifications. And that is a huge pain. It's creating a ton of work for recruiting teams. I talk to recruiters who are spending just hours a week just going and cross-referencing people's backgrounds to see if they're actually the person who they say they are when they apply. That one's a lot trickier because if you use AI ranking, those people are actually going to bubble to the top because AI's gone and lied or misrepresented their skills and their experience to exactly match what your qualifications are. And so we're working on a solution for that. It's going to be trickier, but basically we're going to try to cross-reference with other data points, people's online presence, their job experience on LinkedIn and how they're representing themselves there. Basically, a lot of the things that recruiters are doing manually to cross-check this stuff one by one. And then we're going to have a little bit of automation and detection to help flag it in our ATS. But there's actually some other types of even crazier stuff going on. Did you hear about what's happening in North Korea?
Yeah, how they're a big part of the ruse driving, quote unquote, fake talent or fake hires for the benefit of what I heard is, for the benefit of avoiding sanctions or for the benefit of using earning U.S. based income, but in an offshore low cost of living area.
Yeah, and then in some cases, I think it's a real security risk for companies as well. I was talking to one enterprise customer of ours just last week, and I'll keep them confidential. They were letting me know that they caught 2,000 North Korean actors in the last year alone,
How far
trying to get jobs.
Employed or in the process?
In the process. No, I don't think they've let any sneak through to employment, but they've caught 2,000 different people that have gone through their interview process before getting to hire
Wow.
in 1 year. And this is like a enterprise company. They're pretty upmarket. They deal with like a lot of like sensitive and important data. And so I think it makes them like a prime target, but like that's really scary. Not just from a like, oh, not knowing where your people are working and people misrepresenting, but like I think it presents like a real security risk to companies, especially organizations that deal with like a lot of sensitive customer data themselves.
It's huge. And, coming through the world of recruiting where recruiters often take one of two mindsets. One is I have to find a way to get people in, or the other one is I have to find a way to filter people out. And, the best recruiters will do some bit of both. But yeah, I mean, I empathize with a recruiter who's, speaking with a candidate who likely looks good on paper, who likely has been trained to say the right things and passes all the, checks that a recruiter might have to warrant, them moving them in. But at the same time, are perhaps signaling or triggering other sorts of, signals that might say, is this person fake? Is this person the actual person who, whose resume I'm looking at, or whatever it is that, might surface up. So it's really tough for the recruiter.
It is, and the attacks are getting more and more sophisticated. I heard just the other day, actually, the U.S. government has issued a national security alert to let like U.S.-based companies know about like the North Korean threat here. And I heard just the other day that the attacks are getting way more sophisticated. Two things that stood out to me. One is somehow they've set up these like US-based proxies where like computers in the Midwest, they'll be like routing all of their stuff through there. So it looks like the IP address is coming from the US, because usually that's like a easy way to tell. The second thing is I think some of these folks are using deepfake videos, which are getting surprisingly sophisticated. I've heard this recommendation where companies are going as far as to say like, hey, can you put your hand in front of your face? Because
Interesting.
like, yeah, deepfake videos are not very good at that. And then other companies are saying we're considering, even for our remote roles, like flying our candidates on site to avoid like this threat of folks misrepresenting who they are.
Wait, so that's fascinating. The deepfake. So does that mean that if a recruiter's interviewing a candidate, are you trying to say that the person who they think is a real person is really AI?
It's like an AI generated video, or an AI like changing their appearance or something like that.
So it is a person, a recruiter talking to AI, essentially, in the form of a
Sort
video
of.
person.
I think it's still like a recruiter talking. Actually, I'm not 100% sure how that works. I forget if
I'm
it's
pretty
recruiters
sure.
talking to, yeah.
I'm pretty sure that I've talked to AI. I'm pretty sure that I've talked to a candidate that looked like a person, but the way they were answering the questions perfectly and the way their video was set up and everything was set up made me leave the conversation believing that it was actually AI that I was talking to.
Well, that's another thing that's happening. Whether you're talking to a person or whether you're talking to AI, a lot of people are just using GPT on their interviews, and then they're reading off scripted answers that sound a lot like AI because it is.
Well, that I've seen too. Yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
the real person sounding like they're using a crutch, or in this case, using AI to better answer the questions. But I actually think I was talking to an AI generated person, or whatever it is you want to call it. I think what you were referring to is the deepfake.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, this stuff is moving really quickly, and it's challenging because like every time companies find a new way to defend against this stuff or circumvent it, it's a little bit like of an arms race. The attacks get more sophisticated, more things sneak through. So yeah, we're actively investing a lot here at Gem, like to help our customers solve this problem. One of the things we're seeing, which is really cool, is there's like a set of companies that are spinning up where this is their entire mission, which is to like prevent fraud in the recruiting process.
Oh, is that right?
And do like, bot detection and stuff like that. And so we're exploring partnerships with some of the best like people that are at the cutting edge of this stuff. If you think about how this stuff is played out in other industries where like fraud runs rampant, like financial services and stuff like that, a lot of the best way to approach this is usually like to partner up with like somebody where this is like their sole job and mission and mandate is to combat this stuff, because it becomes this arm race where each side just keeps one-upping each other, and you can't just like build fraud detection or build something that detects bots once and like solve it forever. It's like this every single month you're like finding a way to like combat the most recent attack or vector.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, it's a sounds like a spin-off of the security industry, or a kind of spoke of the security industry. And I've never heard of that applied to recruiting, maybe because it hadn't been an issue, or at least a prevalent enough issue. But glad to hear that that there are companies out there that are battling that. I do wish that I do see LinkedIn as a home base of sorts for the world of, it's kind of LinkedIn's kind of become like the world's talent database. And so I would like to see, it seems like an easy enough thing for LinkedIn to step in and say, require ID or require some sort of authentication. But I think they're kind of too caught up into growth. That would certainly stunt growth numbers. If it's right now easy enough for a person to spin up, 10 fake profiles, so to say.
Yeah, but I think yes, it would hurt somebody's metric internally who's incentivized on like how do we get more profiles. But like I think most social networks at some point, like they realize that that's just a vanity metric, that the only thing you care about, the only thing that's driving real value for the platform is like real people. And in fact, like a lot of the spam and fake LinkedIn profiles are actually hurting the ecosystem more than it's helping. And so I definitely think they should attack it. They're probably uniquely positioned to be able to own identity if they can, professional identity if they can, in like a time where companies and people like need it most. So I hope they do. It is tough because like I don't think LinkedIn has taken it very seriously, and so there's just like tons of like fake LinkedIn profile, tons of like people like botting LinkedIn. I mean, the number of like AI generated comments that I see and things like that.
Wild.
I don't know if you've seen that too. It's just like through the roof. So I hope they figure it out. In the meantime, like there's some really cool companies that are spinning up that are just approaching this problem. Plus, there's other companies that are doing like more of the real like identity background check, identity check. I think like Clear is getting into that. Like Clear from like airport security.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they're starting to get into like the identity verification space, which is cool. And so there's going to be people approaching it from different angles.
Fascinating. So let's pop out for a sec, because I feel like we could certainly continue to go down that rabbit hole. I am curious about many other aspects of it actually, but popping out for a sec, right? So you talked about working with a nice breadth of who's who in technology industry, and probably even in the broader enterprise space. And you said, so recruiters are now inundated with a higher number of applicants. I also know that recruiters are facing scrutiny on the budgetary side, right? So there's probably they probably have more pressure to fill roles faster. And at the same time, companies are, I don't know, probably either trying to hire more specialized talent, or at least, be aggressive in their competition with regards to AI. So where is the recruiting industry right now from your perspective, and what do you think happens next?
Yeah, so the industry's in a really interesting place, and just to put some numbers behind it, we talked about how the number of inbound applications is up 3x compared to 3 years ago, but also recruiters are on average handling 56% more open recs.
Oh, is that right?
Per recruiter compared to 3 years ago. Each hire is taking 44% more interviews, which is wild. I think probably because like the quality of candidate expectations have gone way up from like hiring managers and execs. Maybe also because recruiting teams are, interviewing more inbound applications, and like for better for worse, that those folks pass through the hiring process like at a lower rate compared to like source candidates, for example. And so it's just taking like 44% more interviews to make a single hire. Time to fill has gone up 8 days compared to 3 years ago. And there's this huge disconnect because you'd be like, wow, that's super surprising that it's taking more interviews, that it's longer to fill, because you think there's so many candidates out there. And like hiring managers, execs, they're like, isn't it easier to hire right now? Shouldn't we be holding out to like find a better, more qualified person? So there's this like huge disconnect with like hiring manager and exec expectations about like what it takes to recruit successfully and like what's actually happening, what the numbers are showing us. On top of that, companies are starting to grow again, but they're not growing their recruiting teams. I think like we just surveyed 200, 300 customers, and I think more than 60% of them plan to increase their hiring next year, but like only 10% of them plan to increase the size of the recruiting team.
Interesting. Okay, so they're getting squeezed.
Yeah, everything's getting squeezed. People are getting squeezed more and more. And yeah, there's a big disconnect. And I think that trend is going to continue. Now, a lot of folks are looking to AI and they're thinking, hey, like I think this could help. And so we're seeing a huge increase in demand for like AI and automation. And it makes sense. Like if you're being asked to do more with less, if you're looking to increase your hiring targets without growing the team, like you got to arm the team with something. The good news is in that same survey, I think folks are expecting to be able to carve out more budget. That's like a conversation that recruiting teams, sophisticated recruiting leaders and recruiting operations leaders are having with their exec team. They're like, well, if we need to ramp up hiring targets, but you're not giving us more recruiting capacity, we need to find ways to get more efficient. And, I think like every CEO out there is like, yeah, like AI should be able to help. And so they've got like the top-down support to start investing more in technology. Whereas I'd say like the last 3 years, it's been more like cut costs at all cost, right? Cut costs at every turn.
Right.
And so that piece is starting to shift, which is good. So that's maybe the silver lining in all of this.
Interesting. So recruiters are carrying more recs. It's taking them longer to fill roles. Interview processes are getting more intensive, but then there aren't a larger number of recruiters to handle all that load. So is AI then the equalizer basically? Is it because of AI that all of that is just able to exist?
Yeah, I mean that's the hope, that's the promise of AI, and we are seeing some really, really cool results with our customers that are adopting AI. Like Zillow is saving 75% of their time on application review. Square, Block, they're saving 90% of their time on application review. We just launched Mission Cloud, which is a few hundred person company. They just moved to Gem all in one, so they're benefiting not just from like the AI pieces, but also just from having a consolidated stack where like all of their different recruiting tools are like connected and streamlined. And I think each recruiter is able to handle like 2x the recs compared to their old systems, which is really cool. While they saved money on their stack.
Wow. So do you have some of those stats on hand? Like how many recs are recruiters carrying? What how is that converting into average hires per recruiter per whatever time period you have? Do you have any of that handy?
I do. We have all of this in like our benchmark report. I'll actually send it to you afterwards. The thing about rec load is it depends pretty wildly depending on company size, but also like what type of role recruiters are hiring for. So like, is it more of like a tech and product design recruiter, more like business GTM recruiter? In general, like folks that are hiring on the GTM side, especially for like more like lower level, entry level, certainly not enterprise sales, is like very similar to like end product design in terms of like the amount of time and time to fill and the rec load. But for a lot of like the biz roles, like recruiters can handle like a higher rec load. I can send you all the detailed stats. We have it in our benchmark report. The thing that I remember off the top of my head from that report is that recruiters are running with 56% more recs than they
Wow.
used to.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to take a look at that. I do remember looking at that, but those numbers are escaping me right now. So I'll include those numbers or a link to the report if it's available when we publish this. But fascinating. I'm just curious to the extent that that's sustainable. But it sounds like despite the increased load and the teams not growing to match that, AI must then be the equalizer. Otherwise, recruiters must just then be working exorbitant hours and taking on greater load to fulfill on that demand. It must be
Well,
that the AI is the equalizer.
I think it's both. To be honest, like I think if you
Yeah,
talk to most recruiters in the industry, like they are working a lot harder than ever before, and yeah, recruiting teams are under a lot more pressure to deliver like ever increasing results. And so I think it's both. Definitely, like a lot of teams are working harder, but a lot of teams are also working smarter.
fascinating. So we're in such a different world. So we recruit for early startups. Like our biggest startup is 60 people. Most of the startups that we work with are sub 10 people, maybe a few in the tens or teens. But most of them are building something in the AI space, and it's such a unique world. In fact, I published a podcast that'll probably be out before this one comes out, talking about just the difference in engineering culture between FAANG engineering and AI engineering. And I talk about that through the lens of what AI startups expect of engineering talent and the biases that exist for kind of FAANG engineering talent and what FAANG engineering talent can do. But I see two worlds growing at a continually greater divide at a faster rate than I think is sustainable. And something's going to have to bust, right? Either the FAANG engineers are going to have to catch up faster than, or either the FAANG engineers are going to have to catch up faster than the AI startups evolve, or the AI startups are going to have to open up their willingness to bring in FAANG talent at a faster rate than they are currently doing. So one of those two things has to
Yeah.
happen. I'm not, and
What are the big differences that you're seeing between like the FANG talent and what these AI startups need?
yeah, the AI startups need people that I'll summarize this. I may be missing a couple points, but they need people that are willing to grind at a startup pace. So not all of them are working 996 culture, but many are grinding, and they're grinding because they believe that AI is the future and they believe that what they're building needs to exist. And so they're just immersed in it in a way different way than the FAANG engineer who prioritizes lifestyle and work-life balance and the kind of many things that exist around that. They're immersed in building AI startups are immersed in building AI technologies, and so they're very well versed on the latest and greatest in models and frameworks and tools and what it takes to build AI. And FAANG engineers are pretty far removed from that.
Yep.
And then the third one is around building things 0 to 1 and building in
Yeah, totally.
an ambiguous autonomous environment where there's much less infrastructure, much less in place that FAANG engineers tend to be more used to or rely upon to build what
Yep.
they need to build. And just I find that the world of AI is evolving faster than the world of FAANG is adapting. It's pretty insane, the visible differences. If you talk to a FAANG engineer and then 30 minutes later you talk to an AI startup, how kind of different the two worlds are. And so I wonder if the way you're describing recruiting, I wonder, I'm not as in touch with the world of kind of FAANG recruiting. And I say FAANG, but it's really kind of any company that's pre-AI, pre kind of ChatGPT moment, we'll call it. And I wonder if that's the world, or do you guys work with a lot of AI startups? Do you see consistency between the way AI startups hire and the way kind of FAANG extended hires?
No, it's a good question. We do work with a bunch of AI startups. Like we work with we work with Anthropic, OpenAI. Yeah, Cursor leverages us, but I haven't gone as into the details on like the differences in terms of like the types of talent they're looking for, because I'm mostly thinking how can we build them the very best technology. And um, exactly how they evaluate talent um, has fewer implications on like how they're going to use our tech, and so I'm not as like deep as you are because you're actually like working with them hand in hand on like what they're looking for and stuff like that. I was going to ask you about a fourth trend potentially. Intuitively, it seems like a lot of the new age AI companies, a lot of them, not just like the 6 days a week, but they're also tend to skew a little bit more in person. Certainly, some of them are remote first, but would you say that's another difference? Is like on average, more of these AI companies are like kind of SF based, in person, in the office, whereas like a lot of older companies are maybe have embraced the remote and aren't coming back.
It is. We definitely do see AI startups and newer formed startups embrace in person. I do. I don't work with many, FAANG startups or larger companies, but I assume that many have gone back to in person. I'm actually not sure who has stayed remote and how that's contributing to culture. But from my perspective, 95% of startups that we talk to are in person and they require in person. Remote roles are very rare. And those companies who, happen to be open to remote are pretty, strict on what they expect and the culture of kind of being always on and always available. So you kind of might as well be in person. It's in person is practically simulated at that point. Yeah, that's a good question.
I think that's another difference. I'd say, I mean, if 95% of the companies you're working with, startups being founded these days are in person, that's definitely more than the industry average for older tech companies, whether it's private or public companies. I don't know exactly what the breakdown would be, but intuitively, I think that's probably another big difference.
Interesting. So Gem, you all started pre AI, and then you had to. So you're not AI native, but then you had to adapt to infusing this AI capability. So kind of where would you say Gem is along the curve of going from non AI to being fully AI? And what you talked about some of the areas that customers are benefiting from the AI that you're building. What are some of the next areas that you guys are investing in?
Yeah. So as far as like companies that were started pre, uh, like the sort of GPT, pre GPT, as you called it, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
We've embraced AI. I'd say probably the most compared to like anyone else in the space, and so I think we're the closest to like AI native that there is of like a company that's been around for a little bit. We've spent the last 2 years now like just re-architecting everything from the ground up to have like AI be built natively into the platform. And so what that means is like there's a bunch of like thoughtful AI features sprinkled through every Gem product, but there's also three like entirely new AI products that just weren't even possible pre-GPT, so to speak, that we've brought to market, that we've built like in an AI native way. Um, so we started with, outside of like the small AI features that we've thoughtfully sprinkled throughout the end-to-end platform, the first big one that we built was like AI sourcing agents. And so those are AI agents that can use natural language to go find you people on top of 650 million public profiles. Um, we already have hundreds of customers leveraging those, and they're getting really good. I think the latest that I was checking on, one of the metrics internally that we measure religiously is this thing called match rate. Essentially, of the people that we're putting in front of you, how many of them do you reach out to? How many
Oh,
of them do you say
nice.
yes to?
Okay.
And the match rate that we're seeing is somewhere in that 45 to 55% rate range, which
That
is quite strong when you
that
think about
sounds really
like,
good.
yeah, when you think about just like doing a search on LinkedIn, putting in all your filters and stuff like that and going one by one. Like, I don't know about you, I might reach out to 10, 20% or something of the people that I'm going through. And so like a 45 to 55% match rate feels like a really big improvement over like doing a manual search on LinkedIn. Um, but we pretty quickly realized that a lot of the same technology that we built for the AI sourcing agents could be applied to inbound, and it could be applied to rediscovering people from your CRM and your ATS, folks that have previously applied or that your team had previously been in touch with. And so now our AI is much more holistic. It spans all the different channels. The really cool thing about that is like you use natural language, you get really dialed in on what the important criteria are for a search. You calibrate it once, and then AI goes to work across all of your different channels. So it'll start ranking your inbound to like sort through the hundreds or thousands of applicants you're getting so that you can like review and talk to the most qualified ones first. Then it goes into your CRM, it goes into your ATS, and it starts identifying folks that might have applied or for a different role, or that your team has been in touch with. Maybe they attended one of the recruiting events in the past, or a sourcer reached out 2 years ago, what have you. They're in your system, they're warm, they're hand raisers, and it'll reach out to those folks next. And then the AI sourcing agent will start shortlisting 200-300 people for you a week on top of our database of 650 million public profiles.
So it'll pull from applicants, it'll pull from your existing CRM, and you said on the LinkedIn front, it'll pull from public profiles primarily.
Yeah. So public profiles, which spans like lots of different places where talent could have an online presence.
So it could be LinkedIn, but it could also be GitHub, Stack Overflow, other places wherever a profile is made public, it can pull from.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the sourcing agent will go out, find the talent, and then bring them in, and then you have to approve it in order for a sequence then to be triggered.
Yeah, and that's actually a key aspect of our AI across all of these different channels is the recruiter remains in control, right? At the end of the day, like recruiters, sourcers, hiring managers, like they're making all of the final hiring decisions and decisions about who to reach out to. AI will do a lot of the groundwork. Like it'll find and research those people for you. It will even like personalize a draft and have it ready to go for your review. But then you're ultimately in control over who gets reached out to. And then also as you progress in your search, as you source more people, as you review more people, you can get calibrated with the AI and what good looks like and go and like update the criteria that it's using to do all the ranking. We'll even suggest changes to your criteria based on people that you're passing through or saying no to.
Interesting. So is it a job description, or is it like this whole kind of, intake sheet?
Yeah. So the way this works is actually a blend. We find that the best criteria. So first of all, recruiters can go put in whatever criteria they want. It's all free text. So you just say, I want somebody with 5 to 8 years of experience in software engineering or something like that, right? And that's like one of 5 to 10 criteria you can outline. The key is you want to use any sort of criteria that could be easily understood from somebody's resume, right? So like something about their soft skills or like more qualitative that you would tease out in an interview process, like AI is not going to be able to know that. Like most resumes, you're not going to be able to know if somebody's like a good communicator, right? That's
Right.
not necessarily something that AI can tell from like looking at somebody's resume. And so those criteria are whatever like the recruiter decides are important for that role. Now, we find that AI can actually do a good job of generating that criteria if your job description is really dialed in. And so we have a one-click flow that takes the job description that you've already built for the role, imports it, and suggests 5 to 10 criteria using a bunch of the best practices we know make for good AI criteria. And then we find that they get even better when you paste in your notes from like an intake meeting. And so the cool thing about that is like the more information you give the AI, the better it'll get at like suggesting and auto-generating those criteria for you. And a lot of times the job description might just have like kind of the bare minimum requirements that you need for a role, but like the intake doc with like all of the hiring manager's notes and the recruiter's notes, even though they're like raw and messy, it contains like a lot richer information that the AI can then go generate criteria based on. And so I always recommend including both whenever you can.
Yeah, I love that because job descriptions, I mean, most people just copy job descriptions from other job descriptions and there's not a lot of originality in them. So I love the idea of infusing intake notes, or even if there's an opportunity, I don't know if Gem has on its roadmap, doing replacing Google Hangouts or Zoom as the mechanism between with recruiters and the people who they interact with, because the content from that is really the gold, and recruiters spend a lot of time copy pasting or transcribing into these tools like Gem or other tools that they use.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, we'll take in job description, we'll take in intake notes. The other thing we're considering is, I believe, like RideHire and MetaView have like a cool feature where they can ride along your Zoom call or your Google Hangout and transcribe those intake notes into a structured document for you. And so I'm thinking about partnering with them, because they both integrate with Gem ATS. Thinking about partnering with them to like get those in there, which would be even better. But the other thing that we just rolled out this week is you can enter as many ideal profiles as you'd like, and then the AI
nice.
will generate criteria based on that. It'll just like triangulate across like 1, 5, 10, 20 ideal profiles that you flag as like, hey, this is like what a great candidate looks like. And so that is leading to even better search results.
I love that. And a 50% match rate is really good. I'm personally, I spend my days recruiting. I'm a pretty picky recruiter. I'll over optimize for perfect profile and not be too opportunistic, just to kind of see what happens, because I don't want to waste my time. So I'm a little more of a sharpshooter recruiter. So if I'm able to get a 50% hit rate on automated sourcing, that's pretty darn valuable. And then if you're able to then transcribe notes. So I guess my question is, I mean, are recruiters in danger of being replaced by AI? How far away from that are we? What does a recruiter then do, given all the wonderful automation that's being built?
Definitely not. No. So I mean, I think this is a question I get all the time. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think we're anywhere close to that. There's a few things that I don't think like AI is ever going to replace. So first of all, when it comes to AI today, like you can kind of think of it as like a super entry level sourcer or like admin, where you have to be very, very like explicit about what you want. It can only like really tell what's on somebody's resume. Has a little bit of a harder time like reading between the lines, and so there's still like a lot of human judgment. Like we're nowhere close to AI having like a 90 or a 98% match rate or something like that, right? 50% still means there's like a lot that like recruiters need to like rely on their judgment for. But even more than that, I think recruiting, it's a very human job, right? Like, I mean, unless we get to the point where like companies are hiring AIs, AI agents. But yes, maybe if you believe in like this AGI future where like it's just AIs talking to AIs and all jobs are replaced, like yeah, sure, like recruiters don't need to hire AIs, but like candidates, they want to talk to a human. Deciding like where to go work and like where to go build your career, it's like such a big decision, and like a lot of that like comes down to like trust and building relationships. And so what I think AI is doing is it's freeing up recruiters to spend a lot more time on the reason we all got into this industry in the first place, which is like the human elements of it. And so yeah, I think recruiters are going to be able to spend a lot more time like talking to candidates. They're going to be able to spend a lot more time focusing on providing like an amazing candidate experience. I think it's freeing up recruiters to show up as like more strategic partners to the rest of the organization. And so in this AI future, actually, I think like, first of all, AI is not going to replace recruiters, but recruiters who embrace AI are going to replace the recruiters who don't. Does that make sense? I think the other thing is to stay relevant in like this new AI world. Like it probably makes sense for recruiters to think about upskilling in certain areas, like their executive presence, like how they provide a stellar candidate experience, becoming really well versed in like data and like leveraging data to bring that back to like their hiring managers and the rest of the organization to like advocate for key decisions that need to be made. Like that's like the future of the role in recruiting.
I love that, and I tend to agree. And I've had guests on. I wanted to focus this season on the bleeding edge, the what's happening today in the world of AI. And I've had guests come on who do predict quite a bit of doom and gloom, and have very great cases for that. And I've had other guests come on that are that see AI in way more of its infancy and playing way more of a supplemental role in the future. I tend to have more of the perspective that, or share more of the perspective that you just shared, and in that the antiquated recruiter will be 100% manual, won't touch AI, and will just by nature do things a little slower. Maybe there will be a little more art to it, but they'll certainly suffer from the place of efficiency and competitive advantage as compared to the recruiter that is embracing the most advanced technology and is able to do things better, more efficiently, faster. Though they will have to then supplement all that with the art and the kind of human component to ultimately be similarly effective.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So, any bold predictions for the future, for the rest of the year, for 2026? What does the future have in store for us, Steve?
Yeah, so here's like a really interesting thing that I think no one's thinking about as it relates to AI. The hardest part of AI is no longer like the underlying algorithm. Sure, like Gem has done a lot of work internally to make match rate really good, and to get like really good at prompting and stuff like that, to put in the right guardrails so that people can set up their searches and get dialed in on their criteria. But like, actually, the hardest part about AI, and I think over the next few years, like people are going to realize just how important this is. The hard part about AI is what data does like the AI have actually access to, and like what kind of context does it have access to, so it can make those smart decisions in the first place. And so here's like one really simple example. Like if you're a company even like more than like 200 employees, you wouldn't want like an AI sourcing agent going out there and reaching out to a bunch of people that your own recruiting team had been in contact with like 3 months ago. You wouldn't want it reaching out to somebody who had applied and been rejected like 5 months ago. You might want to like wait 18 months before reaching out about a new role again. On the flip side, like you would want AI to like be hyper personalized based on like who this person is to your organization, your relationship, all the different touch points you've had over the years, the fact that they attended a recruiting event last year, or maybe the fact that you met them on campus 2 years ago, the fact that they interviewed for a different role, maybe even going all the way down to like the details in the scorecards and why you think they could be a good fit for this next role. So my read is that the future of recruiting is hyper personalized. And that means like combining best in class AI with like a complete source of truth. I think that's like the key that's going to unlock the true value of AI, is like having a complete source of truth. The industry's been talking about having a better source of truth for a long time, because like the ATS has never really been the perfect source of truth. Like it really just like has only ever done a good job of tracking people like once they apply, once they're in the interview process. I think this is like a missing piece that like a lot of people aren't really realizing because AI is like so new. But from my perspective, and like I think Gem's unique perspective on the market is, for AI to work, it needs to have all of the right data and context. The most important and most valuable data and context in recruiting is all the relationships and touch points for the people that you care about as a company. And to achieve that source of truth, like the best way to do it is to have like a true all-in-one, like end-to-end recruiting platform where like every single product is like completely 100% integrated, so that you don't have all these different like data silos. And so I believe that the future is AI first. I also believe that the future is all in one. And so, that's like my prediction for the market is over the next few years, especially as AI continues to evolve, more and more companies will realize that like, oh, the thing that matters less about AI is like, it's not like the algorithm, or it's actually getting this like source of truth for all of your recruiting relationships and touch points.
Fascinating. Well, it sounds like, you and the team at Gem are, well on your way towards building that. So appreciate you guys investing in that, as it, benefits the world of recruiting and our team here at First 10. So appreciate you doing that, Steve. And fascinating conversation. I feel like we could have kept going. I think, while this is while the first conversation prompted this conversation, the second conversation I think is going to prompt a follow-on conversation because a lot more avenues. I thought it would be fun to go down. But thank you again for being with us. Really appreciate your time and sharing your perspective. For our listeners out there, where can people reach you, and what would you like to hear from people about?
Yeah, totally. I'm always happy to connect with folks. Love connecting with folks from the industry. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty regular there. I write a bunch of content related to AI, recruiting, but also just like general company building stuff and like culture and stuff like that. So yeah, find me on LinkedIn. And if you're Gem curious, if you're curious at all about what we're building on the AI front, or like what we're building as like really the only AI first all-in-one recruiting platform, feel free to drop me a line. Happy to give you a peek of the latest.
Awesome. Thank you again for being with us, Steve.
Likewise.